The fatal of the sting of the shock of the night, of the sting of the shock of the darkness of the moonlight, of the night, of this night, of the night will always wreak havoc tonight. This night is like no other tonight. It has a little bit of a sting of a shock, a sting of a shock of the shadows of the night, of the mysterious night, which will never be undone tonight, because the night always controls all tonight, especially in the moonlight tonight, of this night, of the night, of this night, of the timeless night. The time of the night is ticking away tonight, throughout this night, of the conquering night, of the unknown sting of the shock, of the moon, of the night, of the moonlight night. This is a sting of a shock, a sting of a shock, a sting of a fairy shock of a night, a sting of a deadly shock of a night. This is no other sting of a shock tonight. This sting of the shock is different than the sting of the sting, of the sting of the sting. This is a sting of a shock, but it is like no others because it hides in the shadows tonight, wreaking havoc and taking apart whatever it can tonight, because there's no sting of the shock. There is no sting or a shock, but there is a sting always with a shock of a night, of a moonlight night, of this night. This night will always be undone, but this night will always tear apart what it can tonight by undoing what it can tonight, of this night, of the night, of this night, of the night, of the undoing night, of the night, of this night, of the night. Who knows what will happen tonight? The night will always be undone. The night will always be undone tonight. The night will always be undone. But the night has its way of twisting and turning tonight. With the sting of the shock, the sting of the error of a shock. It's like a ghost like night, of a 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 night. A sting of a shock, a sting of a shock. It will always be undone. It will tear apart whatever it can tonight. The sting of the shock is more like a painful shock. A painful shock of a night. Of the moonlight night. This is no other moonlight night. This is the thunderstorm moonlight night. This is the thunderstorm moonlight night of the night. It cannot be mastered. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be reasoned with. You have to give up something that you desire in order to reason to avoid the sting of the shock of the night. You have to give up something that you desire most. You have to give up something that you desire most of this night, because the sting of the shock always hides within the shadows of the night, of the shadows of the 11 tonight. The shadows of the 11 is where the sting of the shock lies. The shadow of the sting of the shock lies inside the sting of the shock of the night, of this night, of the night. This night will always be controlled by the sting of the shock. The 11 controls the sting of the shock, but you have to give up something from the final 11 in order to get the sting of the shock to go away tonight. This is no other supernatural sting of a shock tonight. This sting of the shock will tear apart whatever it can tonight. It cannot be undone. It cannot be undone. It cannot reason with tonight. The sting of the shock is more powerful than you think tonight. This night will always be in control of the shadows. The night will always be in control of the shadows. The supernatural shadows hold the sting of the shock tonight. The supernatural holds the sting of the shock. The sting of the moonlight shock. The sting of the moonlight shock of the night. Moonlight shock of the night. This is more than just lightning and thunder. This is more than just lightning and thunder. This is the sting of the shock wave tonight. It tears apart what it can tonight, because it is controlling and bending power to its will tonight. Because it's the sting of the shock, of the sting of the shock, of the sting of the shock, of the sting of the shock. The sting of the shock is more powerful than the final 11. The more powerful than the final 11. The thunderstorm, moonlight, is more powerful than the thunderstorm of the final 11. The final 11. The final 11. The final 11 is more powerful than the sting of the shock. The sting of the shock. The sting of the thunderstorm shock. The sting of the thunderstorm shock of the night. The sting of the thunderstorm shock of the night. The sting of the thunderstorm shock of the night. You cannot control it until you reach the final 11. The final 11 is just currently waiting against the sting of the shock. Against the sting of the shock. This is the shadow moonlight shock. Shadow moonlight shock sting. Shadow moonlight shock sting. Shadow moonlight shock sting. Shadow moonlight shock sting. The final 11 is the key tonight. But the sting of the shock of the shadows of the shock will always be waiting within tonight of the final 11. The final 11 is the key, but it cannot break it. Of the sting of the shock, the sting of the shock, the sting of the shadow shock, sting of the shadow shock, sting of the shadow shock, sting of the shadow shock. This is the moonlight thunderstorm, moonlight thunderstorm, moonlight thunderstorm. Of the sting of the shock, the sting of the shock. The final 11 cannot control it. The final 11 cannot control it. Tonight. That is all. Until it will be continued tonight.